Okay, what are you saying, people, and welcome back to my channel. Today I've got another weekly forex analysis for you guys. So on the screen are the pairs we'll be looking at today, but make sure you stay to the end of the video because I will be going into depth analysis about what's happened during this trading week and potentially what could be happening during next week's trading week. So make sure you stay to the end of the video for all of that. But like I said, guys, another weekly forex analysis coming up, so let's get straight into it. First up, we've got Euro USD. Okay, so first we've got Euro USD. So for this pair, as you can see, this week mainly retracement. We had these bullish candles here, but we haven't really gone anywhere. I did say for this week mainly expect to see retracement, and if we do get a nice rejection, we can expect to see some continuation, which still hasn't happened yet. Price looks like it's still in retracement mode. I did highlight 1.2 as an area of interest where price could come retrace to reject and fall. However, as you can see, we haven't quite hit that 1.2 area. We found support just below, resistance just below, so previous support, term resistance just below that area, which price is rejecting it quite well. You can see support there, resistance there, had a really nice move to the downside, and now is acting as resistance there again. So the market for me is still very bearish after that big collapse the previous week. I do expect to see some continuations from that and some new lows past this support there around 1.18500. So this area of support here, I do expect to see some new lows, but for targets next week, again, first target has to be this support because we can still reject it and see price push higher. So again, from this area here, 1.19500 or 1.2, depending when price rejects. I'm expecting more downside, looking for shorts around that area. First target will be that 1.18500, which is this previous low, and if you can clear that, I think around the 1.18 area will be a nice target to expect some new lows out for Euro USD. So if I do zoom out, you can see if I get the trend line tool and just connect these lows here, we do have a little bit of a trend line there in the market. So first, second, third test, potentially could be having a fourth test soon, and if we were to come back down, it will probably line up around the 1.18 mark. So yeah, expecting more downside for Euro USD, potentially test that trend line again. That probably won't happen next week, it might be the week after, but nonetheless expecting more downside for Euro USD. So looking for shorts next week, either we reject this area here or we push up to 1.2, reject that area there as well. Doesn't really matter because we're still looking for those shorts, and if it does push up, it just means our risk to reward is a little bit better. So looking for shorts for next week for Euro USD back into 1.18500, and if we can get a break into 1.8 slash where that trend line is there on the daily. Next, we're going to take a look at USD JPY. Okay, so next up we've got USD JPY. So for this pair, as you can see, overall we are still very bullish for this pair. The market is still creating higher highs, higher lows, and last week I did say that with this structure, expect more upside for USD JPY, create some higher highs potentially. And again, I did say if we do pull back into our trend line here on the 4H, so just connecting these swing lows in the market, so first, second, third, we had this fourth test here, I believe quite early on in the week, and as you can see, nice change of momentum there, good rejection, and price went on creating higher highs. So overall the market is still bullish, and I think we can see some more upside this week for USD JPY. However, we are trading in this area of resistance, as you can see, big move to the downside, and now we're kind of trading right in the middle of that area. So don't really want to be buying into that. Want to see price retrace first, give us some nice retracement, a pullback, and then we can look to get involved. So again, similar to last week, if it pulls back into that trend line, that will be a nice healthy retracement, so that could be quite attractive for some buys. But again, do be careful because we could break through it and see a move to the downside, because do remember that when we did reject this area previously, it was quite an aggressive push to the downside. So if we do see a similar reaction to that, a break of that trend line, break of structure, we could be in for a move to the downside. So I will change my bias from bullish to bearish and look for selling opportunities. So if we do come through this trend line, create some new lows, pull back up, give us another lower high, and then yeah, sales will be looking good for USD JPY, and we could look to take that much further to the downside. But right now the market is still bullish. I think we can break through this resistance and give us some higher highs, maybe all the way around the 1112 mark. So More upside for next week. Allow the market to retrace first. If you do bounce that trend line, great place to look for some buys, but be careful if we do break it, because we could be in for some more bearish momentum. In that case, you want to flip your buys to the downside, but right now it's still bullish, waiting for a pullback to take this on and see some more continuations for USD-JPY.
And next we've got USD CAD.
Okay, so now let's take a look at USD CAD. So for this pair, as you can see, we saw some retracement to the downside this week, which was expected. I did say last week that we are coming into this trend line, first, second, third, having that fourth test. We were expecting to see some type of reaction. The market is still bearish, as you can see. We are still forming those lower highs, lower lows. The daily, however, we had this big shift in momentum, so we can expect to see more upside for USD CAD. Not saying again we're having a reversal, that's a bit too early to call for USD CAD, but we can see some more upside just because of this big shift in momentum. And we had this really nice bowl shape here, which is indicating that the sellers have lost and the buyers are coming strong to the market. So especially with this big push to the upside. So this here looks just to be retracement, and I'm expecting to see another push to the upside back into that trend line. And if we can get a break of that trend line into this area around 1.26, so that's what I can see USD CAD pushing onto. Again, that'll probably take a couple of weeks to get there. So more immediate price action. As you can see, we're pulling down into this area. I did say last week that this is the area of interest, that if you do hold into this area, you can look for some buys, and so far the market is holding and failing to break through. You can see these wicks. So if you do keep that price action up on Monday, could be some good buys here, pushing to the upside, again targeting that previous higher around here, 1.25. But if we do break through this on Monday, then the second area of interest will be this resistance here. As you can see, nice resistance, 1, 2, 3. Will we turn support now on the 1.22 mark? So if you break through that, again, a really nice area to look for buys. If you do get some nice confirmations there, can look for buys, and again, that just makes it a better risk to reward trade, because we just got more pips to catch, and we'll still be targeting the highs up there. So more upside for USD CAD for next week. I think potentially looks like the market is failing to break through this area, so I do expect to see a move up from this area. But if it doesn't and we break through, then this will be the second area of interest, and again looking for those buying opportunities for USD CAD. So looking for buys next week for USD CAD. First area, kind of trading at that area right now, so just monitor price action there. But if you do break through, look around 1.22 for potential buys, and then yeah, longs all the way back up to 1.25 and maybe even higher.
Up next is Euro GBP. Sorry to interrupt the video, guys, but if you are enjoying the content and you're finding it useful, make sure you go hit the subscribe button down below, and also make sure you drop a like as well. It really does help the channel out. But anyway, back to the video.
Okay, so next up we've got Euro GBP. So for this pair, overall we are still bearish here. The market's still making lower lows, lower highs. It is quite weak, weak trending. You can see very choppy, but it is still making those lower lows, lower highs. Right now we're trading at this key area of support term resistance, 0.86. Key area support, big push to the upside, big push to the upside, now resistance. And if you do keep that up, I can see a move to the downside, and also we do have this trend line here as well. So just connecting all those daily wicks. Price is rejecting this trend line really well, and if it does reject this resistance as well, I can see a move to the downside back into that previous low there, previous low that we made this week. And if you can break past through that, then 0.85 area around here, which is the previous low on the weekly time frame. So yeah, I can see more downside for next week for Euro GBP. However, it is a very choppy market, so it could indicate to us that this price action could be wanting to be over, take a breather and see a push to the upside. And if that's the case, and you break through this resistance, break through that trend line, start holding this area of support, then I will shift my bias from bearish to bullish and look for buys. And in that case, we can look to see a push back into this resistance here, because this potentially could be a higher low, and we could see another continuation higher up back into that previous resistance. So I'm aware of the bullish side of things. If you do break through the trend line, break through that resistance and hold that as support, then yeah, great buys back into that resistance up there. Of course, you don't have to hold your trade to that long, but that's what I do see price pushing into. But if we don't, and we hold this trend line as resistance and hold that resistance level there on the daily, I can see a move to the downside here on the 4H back into that previous low. And if you can get a break through that, see some more lows, then 0.85 area of support on the daily does look likely as well. So more downside for your GP for next week, as long as we stay below 0.86 and below that trend line.
Okay, so up next we've got AUD USD.
Okay, so up next we've got AUD USD. So for this pair, we saw retracement to the upside this week, which was expected. We did have this big plummet to the downside last week. So again, we're expecting to see some retracement and the continuation to the downside. So as you can see this week, we had retracement back up to 0.76, very key area of support in the market, big push up again, and now we're holding it as resistance. So from here, I do expect to see a move to the downside again. Like I said last week, targets are still at that 0.74 level here on the weekly time frame. This is our previous weekly high, weekly low, weekly high, and now I'm expecting a retest of that resistance around that 0.74 area. So those are the targets for AUD, and potentially we could pull back a little bit more, because if we do measure 50% of this move down, it is around about this area here, and we haven't quite touched it yet. So there is room for AUD to pull back a little bit further. So I do have my eyes on this area here on the 0.76600 area, resistance there, support there, previous support there as well. So if we were to push into this level, test that, I will still be looking for shorts for AUD, expecting to see another break to the downside and a push back into these lows. And if we can get some new lows around that 0.74 area, so more downside I'm expecting for AUD. The retracement might not be over, so be aware of that. We still might see some upside, but right now it is showing that we are rejecting the 0.76 area. So if we do keep that up on Monday, then we could be looking for some shorts earlier on next week. And again, targeting this previous low here, and then the break of that will target 0.74. So more downside for next week. Two areas of interest: 0.76, which is currently at, monitor price action there. If it keeps rejecting, then yeah, shorts look good. However, if we turn bullish again and break through 0.76, then look at 0.76 for shorts there again, and still looking for those sells back into that previous low. And if you can break through that, back down to 0.74.
Now let's take a look at NZD CAD.
And now we're going to take a look at NZD CAD. So for this pair, again, we did see some upside this week. Again, the market is still overly bearish for me. Again, you see in the daily chart there, we're coming back into a very strong area of support, but the market, if you look at the structure there, is still bearish. There on the daily in the 4H, you can see right now we've pulled back into that previous structural high there. So you can see push, pull back, push, pull back, push, pull back into that previous high. So if we do go and break through this, the market will be turning bullish down the 4H. So we might be seeing some more upside there, but for now it is still holding to that area. You saw a really nice strong rejection there just before the market closed down on Friday, so that level is still intact. And if that level is still intact, then I'm still expecting to see another sell-off for NZD CAD back into this previous support. And again, if you do see some new lows, potentially around that 0.86 area, and maybe even at 0.85500 as well, if you can break through 0.86. But more downside for next week for NZD CAD. We're still respecting this key level 0.872. If we break through that, then yes, we're potentially turning bullish. Can wait for a higher low, maybe the break and retest of that, and look to target some highs up there. But right now we are still bearish, very strong rejection of that area. So if you do see some retrace in the lower time frames, maybe 1 hourly, 15 minute, depending what time frame you trade on, can look to take advantage of some shorts back into that previous support and potentially hold on for some new lows. But it does look like the market is running out of steam to the downside, so probably best just to target that previous low rather than holding on to some new lows. But overall, the market is still bearish here for NZD CAD, holding on to that previous structural high. So if that does break, then yes, we could be looking for some longs, but the market is still bearish, still rejected it very strongly there just before the market closed. So waiting for a bit of retracement, and as long as we can stay underneath that area, shorts do look good, and we'll be targeting the previous low around the 0.86 200 mark.
Next up, we've got GBP NZD.
Okay, so now we've got GBP NZD. So for this pair, I was expecting more upside this week. We just had a strong break above our key level of resistance last week, and if you can get a nice break and retest of that, I said look for some long opportunities. However, as you can see, we did actually break through that area and price did fall to the downside. So again, there isn't really much of an opportunity anyway. You can see a big bearish candle breaking through that area, so there was no real break and retest opportunity, but if there was, there would have been a nice opportunity for some longs. However, as you can see, we did break through that area, so a bit of a false breakout there of GBPNZD. However, the market is still bullish and is still pushing to the upside, creating higher highs, higher lows. But I do have a trend line here connecting these major swing lows, so 1, 2, 3, 4. I think as long as the market does stay above this trend line, I think buys still look good for GBPUSD. If you do pull back into this area, see if you can get a nice bounce, and then again targeting that same resistance, potentially targeting those highs again, but be careful because that was a false breakout, so the market does not have to go and revisit those areas. But this resistance here does look like a really likely place. The market, if it was to bounce through that trend line, will probably go in ahead to. So more upside for GBPUSD after this retracement, but that is a big sell-off, so I'm expecting to see a little bit more downside there. Watch that momentum slowly run out, test the trend line, see if we can't break through it, see if we can get some nice strong rejection. Then some buys do look good back into that same resistance around the 1.98 area. However, if this is a reversal after that false breakout, we probably want to see a nice strong break of that trend line there, give us some nice new lows, and then on the retracement we can look to either take a short on the retest of that trend line or a key level, and then we can look to short it back down, but I need a lot more development for that to happen. Right now the market is still bullish, still obeying that trend line, so yeah, looking for a bit more retracement back to the downside, see if we can't break through that trend line, and if we don't, look, drop to the lower time frames, 4H, that would be nice. And then if we hold on to that, targeting the 1.98 area, let me just redraw that, targeting that 1.98 area, which is that resistance there. So that could be a really nice trade. I think there's a good mileage on that, again around 290 pips, so again more than enough pips to catch on that move to the upside, but again just wait to see if we can get a nice rejection of that trend line and a nice push back up to 1.98.
Next, we're going to move on to CAD JPY.
Okay, so now we've got CAD JPY on our screen. So as you can see for CAD JPY this week, we had a nice push to the upside. Again, we did have that big plummet to the downside, so expecting to see some retracement higher up. Again, this was quite a big push up as well, so it didn't look too much as a retracement because of the way it pushed to the upside, but I'm still treating it as retracement for CAD JPY. We did have previous resistance here, turn support, so that's why we had that big push up. And now CAD JPY is in this support area, now turn resistance. So from here, around the 90 mark, I am expecting to see some downside for CAD JPY next week. We've had this big push to the downside here. We've pushed back into that previous area of supply. I'm expecting to see some type of lower high here and then push back down. So we'll be looking for selling opportunities for CAD JPY. Right now it is moving a little bit corrective and had a big push to the upside before the weekly candle close, the week trading week was over. So wanting to see maybe a revisit of that previous high there, reject from it again, strong rejection, then we could look for some short opportunities, and then if we're lucky we can see the market push all the way down to these lows potentially by the end of the week, but it could be could take a little bit longer because again it is quite a big push to the downside that we had because of those fundamentals. 174 pips, so it might take its time, but I do think CAD JPY can revisit these previous lows around the 88-200 mark. So again, more downside for CAD JPY, and if I go into the weekly chart, you can see where we are. If we zoom out, again we have this double top here where the market tested this area once, twice, collapsed to the downside all the way back down to around that 81 area. So I do think we can see a bearish reaction. Again, the market has had a big push to the upside, so we still need to retrace some of this move anyway. I'm not saying that we're going to go and have that retracement now, but the downside potential is still there for CAD JPY. So for next week, looking for selling opportunities. You can see we're having a hard time breaking through there on the daily as well. The market is stalling a little bit, so I want to see if we can have another reaction at this level here, fail to break through it, and then we could look for some sells to take us back down, and if we're lucky, like I said guys, all the way back down to that previous support around 88-200.
Up next is GBP USD.
Okay, so next up we've got GBP USD. So for this pair we saw some retracement to the upside back into 1.4. I did say last week that we will be looking for 1.4 for some shorting opportunities for a move lower, and that's exactly what happened. And then we saw the fundamentals come in for GBP, but from a technical standpoint anyway, it was really lining up for a move to the downside. The fundamentals just gave us the extra kick. So I'm expecting more downside next week for GBP USD. Nice area of support here, 1.38, and that's exactly where I'm expecting price to go. And if we can get a break of that, then I'm expecting price to come back into this support here, which is where we had the double bottom, and we start to kick off to the upside. So for next week, only looking for selling opportunities really. Maybe if we get above 1.4 and start holding that as support, I might change my bias, but right now only looking for selling opportunities for next week. So if you do retrace up, give us another lower high, will be a nice opportunity to sell back into this previous support. And if you can get a break of that on the retest, we could look for sales and again back into that 1.37 or 1.36800 support. But anyway, more downside for GBPUSD. First target will be this previous support 1.38, and if we can get a break of that, 1.36800 will be the next target.
And next we're going to see what's happening with GBP CAD.
Alright, so next up we've got GBP CAD. So for GBP CAD, we actually had a big push to the downside this week. I was actually expecting to see a push to the upside. If we can break and hold this support here, term resistance there for GB CAD, and as you can see, I had a bit of a false breakout. If I go in the 4H time frame, we did break above it, however we didn't really sustain ourselves and price broke back underneath. So I had a bit of a false break of that resistance, but the market is essentially holding that area. And I do think if we do keep up this bearish structure, because you can see if I do zoom out, the market is making these lower lows and lower highs. I think maybe we've got a bit of a trend line there if I connect these previous points. So again, first test here, second test there, third test there. So if you do keep up this bearish structure here, then there's a good probability that the market will push back into this previous low around 1.68500. And if we can break through that, probably give us some new lows there as well. So I'm thinking more downside for GBP CAD. We do have this area of support we have to watch out for, because this is where the market did consolidate for, pretty much a month or around about a month before pushing to the upside and seeing that bearish momentum. So I think if we can clear this support here, then the probability of price pushing back down to these previous lows does go up much higher. So I'm expecting more downside for GBP CAD. Again, for next week, I think probably waiting for a bit of retracement off this support. So again, the market is quite bearish right now, so I'm expecting to see a test of that area on Monday. And if you do have a nice retracement, maybe back into that trend line, that'll be a great place to look for some shorts, targeting back at that support there again. And if you do get a break all the way down there, or potentially you can wait for the break and retest of that area and take it back down to 1.68 750. But either way, looking for shorts for next week for GBP CAD. There might be some nice short-term buys there off this support if we do hold it. As you can see, nice area of support there as well. So maybe short-term buys there. I wouldn't hold for those buys for too long, because I still think GBP CAD could be on its way down with that bearish structure, and obviously having such an aggressive reaction to that trend line there as well. So expecting more downside for GBP CAD. A break of this support will take us back down to this support area here, 1.68500, potentially some new lows there as well. So I'll be waiting for some retracement and then take it back down again, but potential short-term buys maybe on the 15-minute can be looking good early on next week if we do reject this area, because obviously we could break straight through and just go down to this area anyway. But if you do hold into this area, some nice short-term buys, but then I think quickly into some shorts to take this back down, back into that previous support, then a break of that into 1.68500 all the way down there.
Okay, up next we've got GBP JPY.
Okay, so up next we've got pound JPY. So for this pair, we did start off the week quite bullish. Again, we were expecting to see some retracement. We did have this nice area of demand there and resistance as well that the market's revisited for the first time, and we did see some aggressive bullish momentum to the upside there. Nonetheless, still treating that as retracement of that bearish leg to the downside. I'm expecting to see the market fall over to the downside again this week. So yeah, more downside for next week for JPY. We pull back into this resistance. As you can see, we tested it a few times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, had it again the 6th time, and then we collapsed to the downside with help of some fundamentals. But nonetheless, from a technical standpoint, we were looking for shorts anyway. So for next week, looking for a bit of retracement. It would be nice to see if we can revisit that area of resistance again, and then that would be a great risk to reward to sell it back off to that previous support and the 152 area. But again, that doesn't have to happen. So yeah, just looking for some retracement next week, potentially around the 4 hour time frame. Then we can scale lower, 1H, 30-minute, 50-minute, and then really maximize that opportunity. And targets will be that support down there. I think the first target does have to be this area here, because we did hold this area of support quite nicely, gave us a big injection of momentum to the upside there, so that potentially could cause some struggle for price. So again, first target will be this support around 153,200, but if we can get a break of that, I think we'll probably see a nice drop back into 152 and potentially even further. But anyway, looking for shorts for next week for pound JPY, targeting first 153,200, and a break of that, I think we can target 152.
And up next, we're going to take a look at gold.
Okay, so next up we've got gold. So for this pair, again, nothing's really happened this week. As you can see, the market is essentially just moving sideways, consolidating, having a tough time to break through this 1780 level, key area of support, which I did highlight last week. So you can see here, really nice big push to the upside. Again, nice big push, and a very nice big push there recently from that same level. So 1780 does have a lot of weight behind it, and it is again going to need a lot of momentum to go and break through and continue to the downside, because I think if it does break through, then the probability of price reaching this previous low where we had this double bottom does look quite likely back down to 1680. So far we're holding on to this support, and again we've had this big dump to the downside. Again, no bearish candle, no bullish candle since we were trading up here around the 1900 area, and our first bullish candle came back down here. So we still need to retrace some of this price action there. And on the 4H, I did highlight this area here of 1815. Key level of supply there gave us that extra big kick to the downside. So I think we can retrace to the upside, go and test that area, then might fall over again, because the market is still quite bearish here for gold. So I still can see more downside and potentially can still see a break of 1780 as well. So I want to see a bit of retracement to the upside first. Gold's having a hard time moving anywhere, so probably need to see a breakout of this resistance first for anything to happen, because if we don't, we could potentially see another week of price action moving sideways. So I think if we can break through this, again, we want to see a 4-hour close above that price action there, because you can see we had this big wick that's probably closed above from the 30-minute, the hourly, giving people those false breakouts. But by the end of the 4H candle, you can see prices pull back and close there with that big wick. So waiting for a strong 4-hour close above this area, and I think that could take us into this resistance here, and then again some nice shorts available there as well. Or if you were to break to the downside, that will probably take us to the previous lows, but we want to see a daily close below this area here to give us that indication that we're going to break through that support, and then we can actually see a lot more downside for gold. But right now that hasn't really happened yet, and still looking for a bit of retracement first before we do see that bearish continuation. So my bias is to the upside for gold, but again, a little bit unclear. I want to see a breakout first to be a bit more confident with that bias. But if you do see that that breakout happen, then buys do look quite good and quite likely. And on the retest, can take some buys back into this area of supply here, and then can flip the bias back to bearish, and then take some shorts from that area. Of course, only if we do turn bearish. But right now the market's moving sideways, so not really too interested in gold. But if you do see a breakout, I will raise my eyebrows a little bit, and a push into this area, I will look to get involved in some shorts if we do get some nice confirmations. But right now the market's moving sideways, so just awaiting a break to the upside.
And last but not least, we've got Bitcoin.
And last but not least, we've got Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, we saw more downside this week. We did see price push to the upside, so I was thinking price could have another push to the upside this week. However, we broke through that support there in the market, which is on the 4H. So if I drop to the 4H quickly, you can see we broke through this support here, and the market continued to the downside. So the market right now for Bitcoin is still overly bearish here. You can still see in the higher time frames, we are still in a bearish market. We recently just cleared this support area here in the market there, and then retest that as resistance there yesterday with yesterday's daily candle. So the market is still bearish. I think potentially we could see some more downside if we were to get back above this area of 35,000. If we can get above that area, then we might see some more upside. But right now the market is still too bearish right now for Bitcoin. It is losing that momentum here, so we might see another push into that same area. And if we do reject it again, back shorts, back to the downside, back to the previous lows where this wick is, and potentially some new lows. But if you were to push back into this area and get above it and hold a support, then that could open the door to some nice buys, and again targeting that previous resistance up there. But as you can see, we are still having that bearish structure there of lower lows, lower highs. So yeah, if we do push to the upside, it's most likely going to be retracement for another push lower, unless we get back above this key level of resistance there and hold it as support, then yes, buys do look good, and we can target this 41,000 mark or maybe even higher. But right now the market's still bearish, so expecting a bit of retracement, maybe even a retest of that area again, 35,000, and then more shorts to the downside and back to some previous lows.
Okay guys, so that is the end of the video. I hope you all enjoyed that and found that useful. Like always guys, if you have any questions, if you agree or disagree with my analysis, let me know, drop a comment down below. I'll make sure I'll get back to you guys. But again, that is the end of the video. Thanks again for watching, does mean a lot. Subscribe, drop a like if you're feeling generous, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.